We are live.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Founder Hacks, our podcast where we share something we've seen, something we've read, and something we've learned that's been a source of edification or inspiration to ourselves or the founders that we work with. Let me start by saying a rambunctious welcome to Mr. Alex Moore.
Hello, Ben. Rambunctious.
I feel rambunctious today. A remarkable welcome to Mr. Anthony Enright.
Hi, Ben. Hi, guys.
And a revolutionary welcome to our first ever guest on Founder Hacks, Mr. Dom Jones, who is co-founder and ops director of Moray.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Not at all, Dom, not at all. And I understand Moray you're a multi-site group of bars and restaurants. You're based up in Liverpool, and I hear that you're extremely cool. Would that be an accurate assessment, Dom?
Yeah, that's us. Sites up in Liverpool, looking to grow next year, and yeah, looking forward to 2021.
Great stuff. Well, without further ado, let's get on with it. And I think this week, guys, I've seen something that I'd like to share. Is that going to be okay?
Well, I thought you only did the learns, Ben.
We usually only do the learns, Alex, as you well know.
Yeah.
But this week I have had my eyes open and I have experienced something which I think you were privy to as well. This week I sort of entitled this one Time to Build. And I think we all know that although, we're still in the midst of this dreadful situation with the COVID pandemic and the impact particularly that's had on the hospitality industry as well as many others. And of course, we've had a lot of people who have suffered terribly and lost loved ones. I'm just starting to see these wonderful little shoots now that people are seeing there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and actually we're reasonably convinced that it's not an oncoming train, that actually we will get through this and get to the next stage. And what I found really inspiring is that I'm seeing more and more businesses now recognize maybe now is the time to start building. Now is the time to start creating the next thing. If we start sort of running now, we can hit the end of this at full pace. And this week I was very lucky to be invited just by accident really to go and see a new site for a business that I believe we've all been involved in at various points, but a business called Andina, which is one of the restaurants behind the Ceviche group, and I believe we found a new site for it, and it was just wonderful to see the team seeing that new site and beginning to imagine what might be possible. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. And I wonder how many other businesses are now starting to do the same and really starting to inspire their teams by sharing that vision of what could be when we're through this. Is it time to build? So, guys, I throw it over to you. Mr. Moore, why don't you come in?
Well, also being there present at the time, is it time to build? Yes, absolutely. This business took a real hit during the first lockdown. We lost our flagship site. It was quite heartbreaking. We had to let a lot of people go. And I think we found a site, the space that's better. Maybe the location's not quite as good, but the space is better. And it was just really wonderful to bring all these people back, to have a look at the site, the energy, the positivity. Those people we've worked together for a long time. And I don't know, I left that meeting absolutely buzzing and happy. And it was just, I think, as a founder, it's growth. I get always excited. I'm not so excited about the nuts and bolts of running a business. It's the growth. It's the story, the potential. It's the potential that energizes me in being inside a business. And I saw that in spades last week, and it was really, really, energizing. Who wants to comment next? Anthony?
I think it's phenomenal, and I see it from a slightly different perspective because some of the organisations that I'm working with at the moment have had really good, some of them have had really good years, but they're also feeling a certain amount of fatigue. It's been hard, how you pivot to working remotely or virtually, and how you pivot your business through this awful pandemic. And what we're actually seeing from that perspective, I fully agree that now is the time to build. And what those organisations are doing for those teams that are fatigued is they're just setting their sights now on next year and actually saying, look, we think the green shoots are going to come from the 1st of April. So let's come together, let's create a theme, and let's start really looking at what we can do over the next 3 to 4 months in order to be ready for when we really think or believe that things are going to improve. And do you know what? Even if they don't improve by the 1st of April and you have to push that date to May or April, May or June rather, do you know what? You've still got a team that's looking ahead and looking forward. And I think that's so important. And I couldn't agree more that if you've got the budget, if you've got the funds, start looking ahead, get ahead of the competition now, and you'll find yourself in a much better position.
And how are you finding it up in Liverpool, Dom? Are you guys in that building phase, or are you?
We're about to embark on it early next year. So this is very prevalent to us. And I think more than ever, your business is a symbol of your mood as a founder and how you're feeling about next year. We've all been through so much and survived it. Obviously not everyone has, but the people who have should be proud of the way they've handled themselves during this. So that should give you confidence going into next year. And that confidence really, really rubs off on your team. If you can, like Alex said, if you can find that growth and those opportunities and go for them, that is a really bold move. And there's nothing quite like growth and potential to supercharge your team, and the guys you're leading, they feel that energy, and that's worth so much.
A clarion call for leadership as well. Well, look, thank you guys. Fascinating to get your perspectives, and let's hope that we can get there, and that everyone who's listening to us right now can get their businesses charged up and ready. Let's move on, shall we, to our Reds. And I believe, Dom, you've read something you'd like to share. I'm super excited. Our first guest founder hack. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. So I'm reading a book at the minute called Radical Candor, which has become quite a popular framework in the recent years about delivering feedback. But there was one particular paragraph that jumped out to me, which was a story about Steve Jobs, who we know, Alex, isn't the biggest fan.
I was going to hold on. We know somebody who doesn't.
I'm chomping at the bit. Anyway, I won't interrupt. Don't interrupt guests.
I'm going to continue with it. So the story goes, when Jobs was a kid, his neighbour showed him a rock tumbler, which was a can that spun on a motor. The neighbour asked Steve to gather up some ordinary rocks from the yard. He put the stones into the can and added some grit, turned on the motor, and over the racket, asked Steve to come back 2 days later. When Jobs returned to the noisy clatter of the garage, the neighbour turned off the contraption, and Steve was astounded to see how the ordinary rocks had become beautiful, polished stones. Jobs would later say that when a team debated, both the ideas and the people came out more beautiful, results well worth all the friction and noise. So I read that, and it said to me, it's okay to disagree, debate, and push each other and speak up. And that level of tension and noise at times can really help develop a much, much greater result. So I wanted to throw that out to you guys to see what you thought of that.
Yeah, I'm going to come in here, Dom, and I love that story. I love Steve Jobs. Not that I knew him very well, but Dom, you and I have actually spoken about him in some detail before, and there's some phenomenal stories and examples out there. And I think you have to have it. I think if your business doesn't have that discussion, that situation where you're allowing people to debate, to have those discussions put across their point of view, then you are going to struggle. There are going to be problems along the way. You can only take the business so far on your own. You need to bring that team on the journey, and you need that team to align and agree on the next steps and how we're going to get there. And the only way to do that is through debate and discussion. And I think we've all got examples of where we've seen that work and when we've seen that fail. Where I've seen it fail is where you have a situation where you have the debate and then there's no action. People can't agree where there's an action, and that happens quite a lot. Or where some of the team agree and not everybody does, and that's difficult too. So if you can have that debate, have that discussion, have that disagreement, but as a leader, bring people together. So even if it's not what you decided or not your point of view, where you can still get people on the bus to say, well, we're going to go ahead, we're going to test this, we're going to see if it works. I think that's the follow-on to that in order for that to be a success. But I absolutely agree. If you don't have that in your business, you're missing a trick, but also you're going to struggle later on to reach that growth and scale, because you can't do it all on your own.
Absolutely. Alex?
Love the story. Okay, I've bit of conflicting things about the man, because I think he was a brilliant businessman, but was he a brilliant human being? I don't know. Never met him. But anyway, love the story, and I do think friction, and I think having a team that thinks differently. I've spoken about this on the podcast is really good, and I think having a team that all think differently and they're all open to having a bit of a ding dong and a bit of to create that friction without going home or taking offense. And I think, as a founder, you can set the team because you get to pick the team. And I think that's the art of picking the team with people who think differently, but they all can take it on the chin. And someone goes, sorry, that's a really crap idea. I don't believe that at all, without taking offense and then getting into your corner. And I think that's where, you give somebody a task as an individual and they might not be able to figure it out. But when you put a team of people together, that's where the magic happens. And that's where everyone's ideas, you interject with everybody, and then the quality of your solution, the ability to come up with solutions is intensified. So love that story. Never heard it before. Really, really like it. Ben, what do you think?
I can relate to it a lot. I mean, I've always loved being in teams that are full of what I call spiky people, spiky strengths. They're brilliant at some stuff and utterly rubbish at everything else. Which I think it is. Maybe that's why the spiky ones need to go in the rock tumbler to polish up. I guess the other thing I say, it kind of picks up on something Dom was saying earlier. Of course, there is always that role for leadership, right? That if you have different people, you probably have different preferences and styles, and making sure that person who loves to talk loudly and assertively all the time, your role as the leader is to balance that person with the one who is maybe a little bit more quiet, or who perhaps is intimidated by that style, to make sure you can bring them up as well. I think as long as you're playing the conductor as well, and you're able to orchestrate it, absolutely, let's have those debates and conflicts.
I'm just going to jump in again, Ben. I really agree with that. But there was an article in or a chapter in Matthew Syed's Black Box Thinking that talks about brainstorming and how you do effective brainstorming, because quite often when you go through that brainstorming process, people always say there's no bad idea and we're just going to accept every idea, then we're going to agree the way forward. And what it talks about is scientifically how it's been tested, where every time an idea comes up, you must debate it vehemently at that point. Don't wait. And if you think it's a bad idea, you must say it straight away and why. And because what happens is when people get used to that kind of environment, they become even more prepared. When they come up with an idea as a brainstorm, they're ready to debate it. So it kind of brings the level up. So it isn't that kind of no idea is a bad idea, and we'll just take everybody's views and then we'll work out what's next. It's no, we are going to debate it. If I think it's a bad idea, I'm going to tell you. So you're ready for that. It's an environment, it's a cultural thing. And you really get to a point at the end where it's been keenly debated, and then we agree the next step. No stone left unturned.
These stones were turned, so that's a nice.
An expert segue. So look, let's take our next item. So we're now going to learn something, and again in a rare first for Founder Hacks, as Dom is our guest, and we are very accommodating of our guests, and we want to milk them for all their worth for you, dear listener. Dom is also going to provide our learn this week. So Dom, why don't you talk us through what you've learned this week?
Thanks, Ben. I'm getting a bit greedy here, aren't I? But what I've learned is a piece about delivering feedback to your team. And what I've learned is that it's really important that it's given in impromptu moments, as opposed to storing it up for maybe a one-to-one meeting later that week or something a meeting next week that you're going to be sitting in, where it should be done in short, snappy times between meetings, really, as close to the event as possible. And I was starting to see this in my business. And then I saw something at home as well. And I've got a 2-year-old. He's nearly 3, and as most 2-year-old boys can be, they can be a bit boisterous and a little bit naughty at times. And he was at this moment, and his mother told him off very quickly and sternly, and he was very upset. And it got me thinking that he got that feedback from her, but on the spot there and then. He hadn't been a good boy. But in our business, the approach might have been to leave that for a week. And if I was to take that approach, I'd have sat my son George down a week later and said, listen, George, when, last Tuesday morning when you were acting up a little bit, that wasn't really good behavior. And he's a good talker, and he'd probably just say, well, what are you talking about, Daddy? And I thought that was, it felt a very close correlation to how to deal with issues that arise in an impromptu manner. And I often see that link when I'm looking after my son, but I just don't know what do you guys think? Is that a valid correlation?
I think that's totally valid. I'm going to go for this one because, I spend a lot of time thinking about feedback and how it works. And we actually had another debate around feedback just a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't agree more, Dom. I think absolutely right. I love the example of your son. I think that's brilliant. My daughter's now in her 20s, so I thought about sitting down with her a week later and giving her some feedback. I think she'd come back at me. But fair enough, right? I love that. And the other thing it adds for me as well is I always think we should know the difference between feedback and assessment, because I think they can sometimes get really mixed up. And doing it in the moment, you give that person all the context they need to make sense of it and do something with it and do something different. I think when you take it out of context, it becomes something else. And don't get me wrong, assessment is important too, but it's a really different thing to feedback. And I think by doing it in the moment and just saying, it was brilliant, or actually, that really could have been different, you're just helping people to be better, and it's what they want, and it just enriches your culture, I'm sure. Alex, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm reminded of when we were in the Entrepreneurs Organization together, and we went to a talk where it was discussed the power of appraisals. Do you remember, Ben? And it was one of the speakers stood up. I think it was you. You introduced her, and she was just talking. There's very little science behind. Companies spend a lot of money on putting in formal appraisal systems. And there's a lot of software out there, and IT consultant, HR consultants, and she was saying her point of view was there's science behind annual appraisals. It's not really there. It doesn't really justify saying it's a good idea. And I just remember thinking that, because at the time in my business I just put in these annual reviews. I thought it was really cool, and I realized that people just hated them. They were like, oh God, I've got to sit down. You've got to go through this form and tick it off, and it's just and I ended up totally ripping them all up and going, you know what, I want a culture where you can, instant feedback, good and bad, but it should be an ongoing process rather than something you store up and give in a year. So when Dom threw this one out for discussion today, I was like, really, really behind that. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, feedback's a difficult one for me because it doesn't always come across in the right way if I do it immediately, because it's generally driven by emotion, and so I've done that in the past. That hasn't worked. Then I've stored it all up and waited till there's what I thought was a better moment. And Dom, I love the analogy there of your 2-year-old, and a week later sitting down there thinking, what are you going on about? So for me, I'm always searching for what works and best practice around that. And I think I've actually just come to the point where tell somebody, get it off your chest, don't let it, because otherwise you can sit and stew on it, make it far worse. And actually, ultimately, people do want to know what you're thinking, especially as a leader. And if sometimes it doesn't come across in the right way, well, if it doesn't come across in the right way, at least it's been delivered. At least they know what you're thinking, so
and
they can
deliver
work
it.
through it.
Anthony, quick question: deliver it directly or through another person? Because that's what we were talking about a couple of episodes ago. What's your?
Yeah, that's right. And again, I've tried both, and they've got to hear it from the horse's mouth, right?
Yeah.
Got to hear it from the horse's mouth, and it's a respect thing as well. I think we got caught up somewhere a few years ago, or maybe even longer, where you have this hierarchy, and you go to their manager and you say it to them so they can feed it back just from the horse's mouth. And I tell you what, I've seen another organisation do is they now make their appraisals and reviews employee-led. And I think I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast. They make it employee-led, so they've got a whole system, a whole process in place where you go, you either want a pay rise or you want to get up to the next step or the next level. It's employee driven, so there's a system. You go into the system, you log in, you put your thoughts down. That automatically then goes to certain people who then review you. You get that feedback. So even if you want feedback, you just want to know you're stuck with something, you want feedback, you start that process. So it actually comes from the employee, which some people may think that's managers and leaders abdicating responsibilities of reviews. It's in its early stages, but it's really working because it's empowering the employee to turn around and go, oh, that happened then. I wonder what I can do differently. Right, bang, I'm going to start a review process. In I go, I do all the legwork, and then I get the feedback.
Oh, nice.
Very cool. Very cool. I think the best practice thing is a really interesting one because, obviously, in former life, used to work with this a lot. And, I must admit, I've seen organisations that sort of end up having death by feedback because it becomes an almost obsessive compulsion that every damn thing that happens is there. And to quote James Clear, who I know we referred to before, I think there's a wonderful little practice which is, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said now? Just to check in with yourself, which I've started to use actually instead of just diving in. But at the same time, that authenticity, I think it's also depends on who you are, right? Because I always felt that feedback given with authenticity in the way that it feels genuine, I think is also powerful as opposed to necessarily that over-techniqued, when you do this, then I this. And I sometimes I think those models can become unhelpful as well because it's just, where it's a human conversation, an act of generosity to say, look, I really think you could hear this. That's how I've found it works for me, but then I suspect it's different for different people. I don't know. How do you want to unpick that, Don? Can you get anything? Is that of any value?
Yeah, of course. It's a huge piece, isn't it? And I think you want to create a culture where there's no fear of speaking up. And I think as leaders, it's very important that you create those safe spaces. I think if you can say to your managers and your direct reports, do you have any feedback on X, Y, and Z? It's just it promotes that culture of speaking up. Not to say that their feedback will be correct, but it gets the conversation going. Instead of like Anthony said, things staying on your chest until the moment's passed or it's too long, and things can't be nipped in the bud early. So I think as leaders, you've got a responsibility to promote that culture and just have those conversations. And we've been speaking about habits, and it's it can become a really positive habit within a company where feedback's given short, snappy periods. But you've got to keep doing it. You've got to keep asking the questions.
Consistency, always the way. Well, chaps, I believe we are at time. So forgive me, as I tend to do. I'll try and summarise another fantastic and even more diverse conversation than we usually have with the addition of a new and hugely valued perspective. So I guess we could say, is it time to build? Should we be starting now so that we get to the end of that tunnel, running at pace and ready to build into the future? As we do so, can we allow our teams to discuss and debate, and maybe that friction is what polishes them to a beautiful shine and helps us grow and create our businesses? And of course, can we give feedback in a timely fashion when it happens so that our people can learn and grow? And perhaps we can too, if we accept some feedback as well. We sometimes forget to do.
Isn't that the truth?
Isn't that the truth? It remains to say, as always, an enormous thank you to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thank you for listening, guys.
An equally enormous thank you to Anthony Enright.
Thanks, guys.
And a slightly bigger thank you to Dom Jones for being our first ever Founder Hacks guest.
Clap, clap, clap.
Come on, Dom.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
It was an absolute pleasure. As always, folks, if you are enjoying Founder Hacks, if these Founder Hacks are adding any value to you, please do let us know. We love to hear your stories and perhaps sharing your Founder Hacks with us so that we can take those out into the world and see what they might inspire. Equally, of course, we have now broken our duck and we have a guest on Founder Hacks. We'd love to have some more. If you'd like to get involved, drop us a line and we'd love to hear about your business and what you're learning and seeing as you take it into the next stage in the glorious future. I've been Ben Thomas. This has been Founder Hacks, and thank you very much indeed for listening.